As someone who spends every day sewing and designing dresses, I love all those events that celebrate and showcase fashion. One of these events for which whispers and rumors are heard days in advance is the Met Gala that usually takes place on the first Monday of May. This year's theme for the evening is the Garden of Time. Inspired by a short story about an enchanted garden, crystal flowers that can turn back time, and a count and his wife desperately trying to outrun reality. So today we are attempting to make an outfit fitting this theme. When I heard about this year's theme, I immediately had so many ideas in my head. Sprawling gardens, flowers, and the concept of time are a huge source of inspiration for me anyway, so it didn't take long to think of something I wanted to make. Regarding the shape of the dress, I leaned into the Elizabethan time period and fashion. With this choice, I wanted to pick up the aspect of time from the story. Turning past silhouettes into modern dresses is something I hugely enjoy, so I had to do it once more. The dress itself should mirror the long bodice with its deep front and the distinctive curved neckline, as well as the cone-shaped skirt the time period is known for. To also showcase the often worn high collar and pleated shift and long sleeves, I designed a cape to go over the dress. Combined, those two pieces show the silhouette of the era really well, while the dress itself still looks like a modern dress. Since the flower that remains in the hands of the Countess in the end of the story is a rose, I chose this flower as inspiration as well, so the color palette of the dress focuses on a soft pink. The cape will be a soft beige with a hint of yellow to represent a rose in its dying state. When both pieces are worn together, the color of the dress is dulled and turning yellow, just like a dried rose. But if you take a layer away, the color changes into something richer, and the rose is blooming again, as if the time was turned back. There were a lot more thoughts that went into the design of this piece that I will reveal over the course of this video, because otherwise I would still be talking for ages. Before we get into the project, I wanted to show you a little addition to my workspace that recently improved my workflow a lot. Especially with projects like this, which take up a lot of space and time, flexible usable workspace is very helpful for me. So when I got the chance from FlexiSpot to try out their desk that is adjustable in height, I was very happy to do so. If you are familiar with my videos, you may know that I like to stand a lot while drafting my patterns, for example, and with the E7 Pro Premium Standing Desk, I finally got the option to do this on my normal desk as well. It's possible to customize it to your needs, so I was able to choose a big enough tabletop to comfortably draft patterns on here as well. This gives me more freedom to work on patterns while sitting or standing when the cutting table is occupied, because I finally got enough space for it. I can work while standing during video editing or adjust the height of the table and so on it. The table comes with extras for optimum cable management so that all the cables are taken care of for when the table moves up and down. And they even offer additional sockets so that all the monitors, sewing machines and chargers can be plugged in without it looking like a mess. This is a great example of something that can improve the workspace even further. If you're interested in one of those desks for yourself, you can click on the link in my description, and depending on which desk you like best, you can use one of the following codes for a discount. Thank you again, FlexiSpot, for making this possible. The first thing we are working on will be the inner structure of the dress. I chose a very delicate fabric for the outside, so we need something more sturdy for within. That's why the dress will get a corset that smooths out the silhouette as well as support the wide skirt. For this we first make a mock-up. I drafted a completely new pattern for it, so we have to check the fit of it first. This means drawing all the different bodice pieces onto a muslin fabric, marking 1 cm seam allowance all around. Since the bodice is made from so many different pieces, I numbered each muslin piece and then sewed them all together. I'm always sewing the pieces together in pairs. Iron the seams and then slowly add all the pairs together. This saves time and I make sure all the seams are pressed properly. The finished mock-up made me very happy because the fit was already perfect. The bottom looked exactly like I wanted it to, and I only had to do some minor changes on the neckline and front. I marked it on the pattern and then started to trace the whole pattern onto a slightly thicker pattern paper. I did this because I wanted to trace the pattern pieces onto tulle and not only needed it to be even more sturdy, but also with the seam allowance included. This is now the second type of pattern paper I used for this project, and it won't be the last. They all come from the same company I already talked about before. I love their pattern paper and get asked about it almost every day, which is why we actually came up with a little giveaway for you. I'll tell you all about it further into the video when working with the next pattern paper. Picking up the theme once more, playing with a lot of transparency as a reminder to the crystal flowers. I chose a tulle in soft pink for the corset of the dress. Since the tulle is a little bit stretchy in one direction, we need to layer it, alternating the direction to counteract it. In the end, I decided on 4 layers of tulle. Now I only had to lay the tulle onto the table and cut around the prepared pattern with my rotary cutter. Usually I do this step by basting the pattern, but I wanted to try this technique as well. While it is a lot faster than how I usually do it, I really missed the basting since it's usually a step that is very calming and fun to do. With this amount of pattern pieces it would have taken me forever though. After cutting, I pinned the pieces to make sure the layers won't shift, and then it was time to sew it together. I'll be using the seam allowance as boning channels, so I sewed them to one side. Surprisingly, the tulle itself gave the bodice a nice shape already, but I still had to add more boning channels around the hip so that the corset can support the skirt later. With all the channels prepared, I then added the boning. I used regular plastic boning, cut it to the right length and then sanded the edges before adding them to the corset. Then I closed the boning channels so nothing could shift and added the final piece to the corset. Now it's time to work on the underskirt. For this we are using the final pattern paper I talked about earlier. Since I'll be cutting a lot of panels using this one pattern piece, I used a sturdy cardboard-like pattern paper to make sure it won't tear or wrinkle when it is used so much. Previously I thought one pattern paper for everything works fine, and it sure does. But now that I have so many different types for different techniques, I'm definitely spoiled and don't want to go back. If you want to try out those types of pattern papers, now is your chance to win them. Stöffler, the company where I got all my pattern papers from, was so kind to sponsor starter packs with 3 different pattern paper in it to test out what you like most. I'm giving away 2 of those starter packages in this video. There is nothing you have to do other than leaving a comment that you'd like to win one of those. Here's a list of what will be in those packages. I leave a link to the shop in the description as well, so that you can check their other papers out yourself. I highly recommend it. Using the pattern for the skirt, I first created a petticoat. This will make sure to create the needed volume at the top of the skirt. So first I cut a half circle as the base and then added layers for volume. Here I alternated circular and straight pattern pieces. Then it was time for the tulle skirt. I cut 9 layers in total with different volumes and made each layer slightly longer. To cut them all, I used the cardboard pattern again and measured the length with my measuring tape. To not get confused, I pinned a little note to each cut layer and then I could start with the sewing. The layers that are made from more pieces had to be sewn together, and the one with the wide circumference at the top had to get a gathering thread. Then I prepared a base from the petticoat fabric again, marked the placement of the skirt layers and then added them to it. I started at the bottom and slowly added wider layers on top of it. Most layers had to be gathered at the top and divided evenly around the base fabric. And then it was finally time for the outside fabric. I chose a very light silk chiffon in 2 different colors. I wanted a light change in color when the skirt moved, so I layered a peachy tone under a soft pink one. First, I needed to prepare all the bodice patterns from both fabrics. They will be added on top of the tulle corset so that the color of it can shine through the outer layers a bit as well, picking up the transparency of the original flowers again. In order to get both fabrics onto each other, I ironed small strips of interfacing around the pattern pieces. This way both layers stick together and I have the pattern marked precisely. This is a technique I had to come up with because nothing else really worked and I'm really happy how it turned out. After all the bodice pieces are prepared, I sewed them together using French seams. Again, I always sewed them together in pairs, making all the seams as smooth as possible before adding the pairs together. The interfacing on the seam allowance made the fabric a bit sturdier, which made the sewing a bit less tricky. When the last pattern piece was added, the whole silk layer could be added to the tulle corset. At this point the top and bottom is loose while the back is secured in a lacing panel. Before I could add the skirt to the dress, I had to work on the lining. Because of the transparency of the dress, I chose a light beige lining fabric matching the skin color of the model. Once more I had to trace and cut all the bodice pieces and sew them together. Then the lining is sewn to the neckline of the bodice, secured at the armholes and hand sewn to the lacing panels in the back. Then all 3 bodice layers, the tulle corset, the silk layers and the lining are basted together at the bottom. And then it's finally time for the skirt layers. Again I'm using the peachy color as a base and then the pink for the outside. From both fabrics I cut 7 straight panels, each roughly 1 meter wide. Then I sewed all the panels together. First all the peach ones and then all the pink panels, leaving the back open a few centimeters. I used the selvage edge as a seam allowance for a smooth finish. And then I could add those layers to the finished bodice. First, I sewed on the peach layer, making sure to divide it evenly, and then did the same with the pink layer. Now that the dress is finished, I only had to make the cape. This is again made from the silk chiffon, but just 1 layer to make it as fine as possible. The cape is sewn using a lot of French seams to shape the tight collar, and then everything is secured with a small ribbon made from the same fabric as well. And after more than 60 hours of work, the dress is finally ready. I wanted to end this video with a little recap because while I absolutely loved the outcome of this dress, I'm still a little bit sad. My initial design was a lot more complex, with embroidery on the neckline and the bottom of the cape to lean a bit more into the look of a dried rose, but I simply didn't have enough time for it. Sometimes this is a bit heartbreaking that those kind of projects have to be picked with a tight schedule or a set number of work hours in mind. But on the other side, I'm really grateful that I'm able to do the things I love every day. I'm curious what the future might bring. Maybe I'm able to work more on creative projects thanks to YouTube and you guys. Or maybe one day I'll actually make a dress for the Met Gala. Who knows? I hope you liked today's video. If you did, feel free to like it and subscribe to my channel. Until next time.